Clayton can't sit still for 2 minutes. James, thank you. I knew about Quentin Mills and he'd written that. You shared that with me before, and that was your punishment for missing one note at the end, which none of us would have known if you hadn't told us, right? But thank you, and it's always good to hear a Christian testimony like that of Quentin Mills. It says that, folks, God can take somebody like us and use us. God can take the ordinary people and make something extraordinary, which he did with Quentin Mills. But you'll take your Bibles, turn with me to Luke chapter 8. I have preached many, many sermons from Luke chapter 8. Now, I believe I've preached sermons on this passage before. Well, I know I have. Not here, but not this one. But it's a chapter that shows Jesus out in the field ministering and doing great and wonderful things. And I'm just going to pick a few short verses here. Luke chapter 8, beginning with verse 43. Now a woman having a flow of blood for 12 years, who had spent all her livelihood on physicians and could not be healed by any, came from behind and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her flow of blood stopped. Jesus said, "Who touched me?" When all denied it, Peter and those with him said, "Master, the multitudes throng and press you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus said, "Somebody touched me, for I perceived power going out from me." Now when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, and declared to him in the presence of all the people the reason she had touched him, and how she was healed immediately. And he said to her, "Daughter, be of good cheer. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace." And may God add his blessings to this, the reading of his word. And, I don't know if it's no secret to any of you, but big news items make the paper, not little news items. But there are some places where the little news counts. There are some small communities where you put everything in. I've shared with you about Summerland where I'd pastored, little stuff that went in there. But there's always things. One thing that attracted us when we first got stationed here in Panama City in 1995, the police reports, the police blotter, the low crime rate, hardly anything. I said, man, this is a great place. This is a great city. We need to go here. I ended a tour here, had to go overseas, then I had to go back to New Orleans where I'd gone to seminary 25 years earlier, 30 years earlier, 40 years earlier, whatever it was, I don't know, back in the 70s. But as I went to New Orleans, you watch the news at night, is how many were killed that day, how many were murdered, and it was just a constant, every day news, somebody was murdered. They had 350 to 360 deaths a year during the 3 years I was there. That's a death a day. Some days you'd have 3 or 4, and you might go 3 or 4 days without one, then you'd have a couple more. But 350 or 60 deaths a year in New Orleans. Here, we were having maybe 2, 3 a year at that time when I came back. I said, well, I love this small town atmosphere. Folks, we've grown up. We're getting a lot of them now. Drugs have come in. A lot of people getting killed here, even down beautiful Panama City. A lot of crime. But because of that, some of the small things don't make the news. Some of the little things don't make the news. Well, there was a big news item here that Jesus was having. A big news item. The ruler of the synagogue's daughter is dying. That's Jairus. Jairus' daughter is dying. He falls down at the feet of Jesus and says, "Come and go to my house and heal my daughter." Everybody knew Jairus. He was the ruler of the synagogue. They had just witnessed Jesus casting the demons out of the demoniac. All big news items. But somewhere in the midst of this big news item is this little incident that we're going to talk about today. This little incident. First of all, here is this Jesus Christ walking among the crowds, the multitude thronging him. The walking word. The walking word. We go to the Gospel of John, it says in the beginning was the Word with a capital W, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's talking about Jesus. The walking word came here and lived among us. That word that was right here, that word initially was written and passed down from generation to generation to generation, but that walking word was always with God the Father. And now that walking word is walking here on earth with us. Jesus is that word. He walked among us. He was here with us. He still is in spirit, but I'm talking about in the flesh. He was here among us. He walked with us. He worshiped with us. He worked with us. You know, we have a hard time imagining that Jesus did everything we do daily. He got up in the morning and brushed his teeth. He got up in the morning and dressed. He got up in the morning and showered. I don't think had showers. I don't know. Maybe buckets poured over him, bathed, whatever. All the things we do, he did it all. He went to work. He took care of others. He ate like we eat. He did all the things that we do. We have a hard time accepting that about Jesus. We kind of put him on the throne, which we should. Don't get me wrong. He definitely should be worshipped. He is on the throne. But he was an ordinary man who had extraordinary faith. Let's say, when I say ordinary, far from ordinary, but he was a man that had the same restrictions that we all have as men. The only difference between us and Jesus when he was walking here on earth was one. You might say one little different, but it's one major difference. He never, never, never sinned. Can you imagine that? Never said a little fib, never told a little white lie, never got angry. If he got angry, it was righteous anger, but never got angry at his brother, never wanted to see his brother get hurt, never got in a fist fight at school. Guys, every one of you, sometime in high school, middle school, we got into shoving matches or fist fights. Maybe some of us after school even. But all those things, Jesus never did any of that. Never sinned. He was the walking word. And here he is walking there among the throngs. People are just coming out, the multitudes. They're bumping into him. They're watching him. Some of them out of curiosity. Some of them wanting to be taught. Some of them wanting to learn. Some of them wanting their faith to grow. But he's walking there. They have just watched him chase the demons into the pigs, and the pigs get drowned. They've watched all of these things. They saw all of that. They're curious. And now the ruler of the synagogue, a major story. My daughter needs to be healed. Will you come? And the walking word starts walking that way, and he's going that way. But folks, when he's walking there with the crowd, that walking word bumps into something that is a very small news item among the crowds. A woman, a wanting woman. A wanting woman. Historians say that she was a Gentile. They believe her to be a Gentile. And she was wanting to meet this walking word. She knew about this walking word. And she wanted to see some scriptures fulfilled that she knew about. Let me read some scriptures that I'm convinced she knew. Malachi chapter 4, Old Testament scriptures. It starts off in the first verse there. For behold, the day is coming, burning like an oven. All the proud, yes, all who do wickedly will be stubble. And all the day which is coming shall burn them up, says the Lord of hosts. That will leave them neither root nor branch. That's the bad news. But again, it started out with, behold, the day is coming. Jump to verse 2. The day is coming to you who fear my name. He says, the Son of Righteousness shall arise. The Son of Righteousness shall arise with healing in his wings. And you shall go out and grow fat like stall-fed calves. What a great thing. He goes on talking about comparing the wicked to the good. But the Son of Righteousness shall arise and will have healing in his wings. Healing in his wings. Now that's a beautiful thought. I want you to hold that phrase, healing in his wings. She knew about that healing in his wings, knew what this said here in the Hebrew scriptures. Wings there. That is the same word used in the Hebrew and the Greek that translates wing here, that translates border, when it talks about the garment that Jesus was wearing. When she came and touched the garment, the border of the garment, touched the hem of the garment, some translations say, when she touched that, that's the same word as the wings that was used in Malachi. The wings of righteousness, the Son of Righteousness, the healing in the wings, the healing in the garment, the healing in the border of the garment. She knew that, and she related those, and she knew the two of them together there. And what a beautiful thought. She was wanting healing. She was wanting healing, and she knew that she could find it. She could touch him. She could touch and find that in that hem was healing. The hem of healing, the hem of comforting, the hem of forgiving. That Jesus could do it all because she knew that's what it said in Malachi. And now she sees it in action here with Jesus Christ as he's walking among the throngs. It was told that, well, it wasn't told, it's historical, that Jews in that day would wear a robe everywhere they went to remind them of being in the presence of God. At the bottom of that robe, they would have 4 tassels hanging down that were white with a blue thread woven between them. And that was to remind them that they were in the presence of God. When they'd see those tassels, if they'd tickle their calves or whatever, it would remind them. Well, the day came when it wasn't popular to be a Jew. It wasn't safe to be a Jew. They were being killed. So they took them and started wearing them inside under their undergarments. I guess that tassel could tickle you a little bit. I don't know, but they were wearing the tassels inside. But today, the Orthodox Jews, when they go to pray and they put their shawl on and cover their head with it and put it around their shoulders, there are those same 4 tassels. Those are to remind the Jew that they are in the presence of God. And that is their reminder to know that they're there in the presence of God. So here, touching that tassel, if you would, touching that hem, it's the hem of healing. She needed to be healed. She needed to be healed, and she knew that only God could heal her, and that he could heal her through the Lord Jesus Christ if she would have faith in him. So she ran up and touched that tassel. Now the amazing thing to me is that Jesus Christ felt the power going from that tassel from his body. He knew that somebody had touched it. He turns to the disciples, turns to the crowd, who touched me? Typical disciples. What do you mean? Look at all these people bumping up against you. This crowd you're here. What do you mean that? You ever go to a football game or a baseball game and mobs coming out and Mardi Gras parade, something like that? You're bumping up, you're like this, people bumping you everywhere you go. That's what Jesus was feeling there. And the disciples said, boy, the whole crowd's here. Multitudes are touching you. What do you mean, who touched me? And the woman was feeling kind of embarrassed then because, you see, she was considered unclean. Her flow of blood made her an unclean person. If she touched somebody else, it was to make them unclean, so she couldn't go out and confess that. She couldn't associate with other people or be touched by other people because she was unclean by the Levitical laws. And this was a terrible thing. She's lived with for 12 years now, and here she is doing this. But she goes and she touches it, but when Jesus persists, who touched me? I think he knew. But she finally came and fell down at his feet and told him it was her, and told him why she had done it. And immediately, you know the story. He told her to get up. Her faith had made her whole. Get up and go. And the disciples were probably astonished. The disciples were probably amazed, didn't know what to think. But this woman had discovered the healing that she needed. This woman had discovered the power she needed by touching Jesus Christ. I think today we sing a beautiful hymn, He Touched Me, He Touched Me. We all want to touch from Jesus. We all want to be touched by Jesus. But how many of us are willing to want to say, I want to touch Jesus? Instead of Jesus touching me, touch Jesus. We want him to touch us with a blessing or some kind of magical dose. But are we willing to touch him? Well, the great historian, 3rd century Eusebius, said that this lady, with her own money that she had re-earned after she had spent all her money on doctors, which is a funny thing to me. Luke is a doctor. Mark records it, says that she spent all her money on many doctors and they still could not heal her. Luke, the doctor, says she spent all her money on the doctors, and he leaves off the part about they could not heal her. How did he word it? I'm looking here how he worded it a little bit different. He left it out, the last phrase that Mark put in there. When Jesus had a flow, who had spent all her livelihood on physicians and could not be healed by any. Oh, and then Mark says, and she grew worse. Well, Luke wanted to protect the doctors. He didn't put that in there. It's about her growing worse. But no doctor wants to hear that. But she did. She grew worse. And until Jesus touched her. Until she touched Jesus, I should say. And now, as she's there, being touched, Eusebius said that she took her money and built a statue to honor Jesus Christ for what he had done. And that statue stayed there in their town until Julian, the new emperor, came along and wanted to revert back to pagan worship and tore the statue down and replaced it with one of himself, which doesn't say when in the historical books, but a historical fact, it was there. A bolt of lightning struck it. Folks, we serve an awesome God. You can send a bolt of lightning to strike that one statue there and to tear it down. don't mess with God. Love God. Love Jesus. Live for Jesus. Let him be the Lord of your life. Well, here's all these things happening now, and this dear lady wanting to touch Jesus Christ, looking to touch him. She knew about the walking word. She's witnessing the walking word. She's the wanting woman. She's wanting to touch Jesus Christ. Folks, we have a wishing world. Not a wishing well. We have those too, but a wishing world. We are a world that wants to touch Jesus. But again, I say, too many times we don't want to touch Jesus. We want him to touch us. We want him to do for us. We want him to come and do all the things that are great for us. God, I need you to do this. God, I need you to do that. God, can you do this? God, will you do this? I listened to a radio interview this week talking about seeking the perfect will of God in our life as individuals. I'm going through it. You go through it. We always do. Saying, what is your perfect will for me, God? And we kind of sit back on a throne and in our chair or something there, or lying in our bed just waiting. Okay, God, what's your perfect will for me? And yesterday, Craig, thank you again for coming in to do it. Craig came in and played Donnie Kelly came in and played Donnie Kelly's favorite song, One Day at a Time, Sweet Jesus. That is exactly what when we seek in God's perfect will, live one day at a time. This dear Gentile lady was living one day at a time, wanting to meet that walking word. She was that wanting woman who met that walking word. And now we see the results. Jesus himself said, your faith has made you whole. Go in good cheer. Your faith has made you whole. Now, as a wishing world, we're wanting to be touched by Jesus. We're seeking that perfect will rather than getting up and walking one step at a time, walking one day at a time, walking on faith. It's amazing when you look back in your Christian life, as you sought God's will in matters, as you just kept on living for him, just doing what you think he wanted you to do that day. Next day, do the same thing, still saying, God, what's your will? Still doing it. And you just keep on keeping on. And then you look back and say, wow, 40 years now, 50 years now, maybe 2 months, I don't know. Look at what God has done for me, because I was willing to do it one day at a time, because I was willing to do it one step at a time. Rather than be in that wishing world wanting him to touch you, reach out and touch him. Reach out and touch him. Reach out and grab the garment. Reach out and say, I'm going to worship you, Lord. That's the way we wish it. That's the way we reach out and touch him. We do it through public worship. We do it through this public singing, which is public worship. We do it through healing. Oh, folks, we see people getting healed. The church still sees healing in it. Those Wednesday night prayer meetings have an impact. Those Wednesday night prayer meetings make a difference. And don't ever take it lightly. Don't ever think that your prayers are not being heard. God hears them. But we also reach out and touch him through our Bible studies. I'm talking about Sunday school, Bible studies at home, yeah. But I'm talking about mostly your personal devotion time, your personal Bible study time, reaching out and touching him through prayer. And let your prayer be one that, what is it you would have me to do, God? And let God speak to you about somebody that needs a phone call. Let him speak to you about somebody that needs a note or card. Let him speak to you about somebody that needs a visit. Let him speak to you about somebody that needs a $25 bill. We don't have those, do we? $20 bill, $50 bill, whatever. If you give a $25 bill, you might be in trouble. But anyway, whatever it is that they need something, let God speak to you about that. And let God touch you that way. But then that's you touching him is what we really need. So when we touch him, we're touching the him. We're touching that him of comforting. We need to be comforted by him. When we reach out and touch him, he comforts us. When we reach out and touch him, he gives us healing. When we reach out and touch him, he gives us forgiveness. Forgiveness. We sang about forgiveness in one of the hymns this morning. We need forgiveness daily. And we need to be more loving. And God can help us do all of those things. And God will do that for us. But you know, when I stop and think about this little news item, newspaper there's got the big headlines, Jairus, ruler of the synagogue, daughter's dying. Jesus stops to help a little Gentile woman. And that's all it'll probably say in there. But then that big article, the headlines about Jairus. Well, you ever stop thinking what Jairus is going through and Jairus' wife at this time? Jesus, come heal my daughter. This is a Jew falling down to Jesus there saying, help me, help me, help me. I'll bow down to anybody if they'll help me with my little girl, my only child. And Jesus starts walking that way, but he stops to help this lady a little aside. And you know the amazing thing about it, when you get that picture of him in the middle of that crowd, this little lady bowing down to him and saying, I did it, trembling at his feet. He stands her up. I could see Jesus looking her right in the eyes, her looking him right in the eyes, as if nobody else is out there. Now she feels like it's just herself and Jesus. He's wanting her to feel that way, just the two of them. And he speaks to her. There's a multitude around him, but all he's hearing is that little lady. Small news in the world's view of news, but he spends the time with her. But now, if I'm Jairus, I'm sitting there saying, he didn't have a wristwatch, but Lord, my daughter's dying. Lord, do you care? Lord, my daughter's dying. Lord, come on, let's get going, Lord. Can we do it? I don't know that Jairus would do it that way. I hope I wouldn't, but that's the way we are, folks. We want to go. Well, finally, they set off walking towards Jairus' home. News comes saying, don't bother the master, she's gone. And he says, we're too late. You know the story. Jesus goes on, says he's never too late. He raises the daughter, and he thinks you're too late. Ask Lazarus when you get to heaven. 4 days late for Lazarus, but he's never too late. And there, Jairus' daughter was brought back to life, and she was all right. Because Jairus touched Jesus. Because this little lady touched Jesus, she was healed. All the healing comes from us touching Jesus, not him touching us. He will touch us, but we've got to touch him. And I think our world today is just not willing to reach out and touch him. We want to sit back and let him touch us. We want to sit back and let him tell us what we should be doing. Folks, it's time for us to reach out and touch him. Are you willing to do that today? Jairus did. Jairus, I think, was patient. Jesus brought the healing. Reach out and touch him today. He wants you to do that. And as you touch him, folks, he's going to give you that healing. He's going to give you that comforting. He's going to give you what you need as you look to him. But you've got to be willing to follow him. As our musicians come and lead us in this song, make it your prayer. Wherever he leads, I'll go. And you know that we can touch him through our prayer. We can touch him through our devotions. We can touch him through our worship. You worship him in the privacy of your own life, in your home, as well as in your church. That's touching him. But will you do what the song says? Wherever he leads, I'll go, as we stand and sing. Let's stand.